Good Friday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Hope your weekend is off to a good start. Plenty of Browns to talk about a little bit later in the show. Jack Duffin from the Orange and Brown Report, really talented guy that we always use his stuff with, the salary cap and information of the like for analytics. He will join us. We'll talk a little bit about a potential Deshaun Watson long-term contract, what the running back room will look like as well. Among the topics to begin with, Deshaun Watson, some developing news concerning Watson and what's going on. Mike Florio feels like the commissioner probably wishes he hadn't taken that commissioner's exempt status off the table back in March, where Deshaun Watson would be basically on paid leave. He did, however, Mike Florio, talked about Deshaun Watson and a potential timeline for the NFL's decision on what to do with Deshaun Watson.
I'd like to think they pick a lane before training camp starts for the benefit of everyone. So we all know what's going on, because this whole thing is about managing PR. And if we get to the start of training camp and they haven't done anything at all, and they wait until the literal last minute to put him on paid leave when week one rolls around, that will mushroom into even more of a distraction and even more of an issue. I think the time to make a decision is upon us. The time to implement it at the latest is the start of training camp.
And again, paid leave would be commissioner's exempt list while they decide what to do. Commissioner Roger Goodell said he wasn't going to do that. He can revisit that at any point in time. So important to note as well, any type of suspension comes from the violation of the NFL's code of conduct, nothing criminal. All right, Mike Florio, again from that same program, talking about the three-step process and what has to happen if Commissioner Roger Goodell, in fact, decides to suspend Deshaun Watson.
The league proposes a suspension, and the union is bracing for an unprecedented proposal from the league. Then, Judge Sue L. Robinson, retired federal judge from Delaware, who has been hired by the league and the union to serve in this capacity as disciplinary officer, a new facet of the personal conduct policy as of 2020, first big test for it. She takes over, has a hearing, makes a decision, and then, unless she finds no discipline at all, the commissioner steps in with full discretion on appeal, including saying to Judge Robinson, thank you for your service, but I'm going to go with what the league proposed at the outset. And I think what will happen is, because there's going to be a political aspect to it, there's going to be a PR aspect to what is a PR tool. The league starts high. Judge Robinson goes lower. Then Roger Goodell strikes a middle ground. So I think that's one of the reasons why I believe the union is bracing for an unprecedented recommendation, because you want to start high, and then you've got room to do something more reasonable when it's finally done, and it represents a middle ground between whatever the league wanted and whatever Judge Robinson imposes. But the one thing that the league is not going to do is put itself in a position to be accused of not being aggressive enough. Not after Ray Rice nearly resulted in the commissioner losing his job.
And of course, that was several years ago, the Ray Rice incident, and all that factors into the decisions. Now, sources have told Mike Florio that the union plans to argue the defense of Deshaun Watson by taking specific aim at the league's handling of Commanders owner Daniel Snyder, Patriots owner Robert Kraft, Cowboys owner Jerry Jones. Snyder, the union, will argue that his punishment in light of the findings and potential recommendations of attorney Beth Wilkinson was weak, not fully enforced. As to Kraft, union will argue the Kraft received no punishment despite allegedly receiving a massage that became a sexual encounter. As to Jones, the union will argue that the league failed to investigate the voyeurism scandal involving Cowboys PR chief Rich Dalrymple, including but not limited to the key questions: what Jones knew, when he knew it, whether he knew Dalrymple was secretly recording multiple cheerleaders while they changed their clothes. With that, let's welcome in G. Bush. He's the host of the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, as long as 92.3 is the barbershop. So G. Bush, the union kind of shining that light back on ownership just to see, is everything standard? Is there a method to the way that Roger Goodell is handling punishment?
Well, I talked about this a little bit before. When you take a look at this, and I've been on record from saying this from Jump Street, when you have Deshaun Watson, and I understand Mr. Florio wants them to come down hard on Mr. Watson, but here's the problem with that. If you're going to be the league and you're going to stand beside the fact that it's the shield, you believe in integrity, your public record and your good faith is really worth defending out here in the public, and that you don't want that to be tainted or stained in any way, well, you would have to have a good enough defense, wouldn't you? You would actually have to have some track record that says you've been hard on ownership, you've been hard on general managers, you've been hard on the individuals that have the most scrutiny behind them, and they have not. I pointed out in a video that I did on my YouTube channel in the barbershop, it points this direct same situation out. When you got Jerry Jones and Robert Kraft and Daniel Snyder, and these are part of not only part of the ownership, these are flagships, these are pillar organization in Washington, in Dallas, and in Boston, and New England. So when you talk about misconduct, the NFL Players Association is going to say, well, what the heck happened here? Where was all these protocols and all this other stuff? If you think that we're going to let you suspend one of our players for a whole entire year, what kind of precedence does that set? Right. So now, if they let them suspend Deshaun Watson indefinitely, what you're letting everybody know is this: you can be accused of something, and depending on how bad it is, you might not get to play again. If you're going to let them indefinitely suspend a person, that means there is no rhyme or reason how you get back in. You're just sitting on the sidelines waiting until all the civil cases clear up. I even heard somebody say something as ridiculous is we're going to have to wait until all the civil suits are cleared up before you can play. Are you crazy? Like, I'm going to wait to 2025 to every one of the civil suits is being completed. That don't make no sense. And they're telling you, even if you're not committed, you haven't committed a crime, you haven't been to jail, you never had to spend an hour in jail. As a matter of fact, you haven't even gone to trial for civil cases yet. So you're telling me without any wrongdoing admission, you could be suspended indefinitely and there's nothing you could do about it. The Players Association will never stand for that. And they shouldn't stand for it, because that just sets a precedent of any other player that comes after them. You could just be sitting on the sidelines. It just doesn't make sense.
All right, so within the last couple of hours, this story dropped from the Washington Post. So apparently, the league has made a presentation on the case it plans to present to the league. The Nflpa has seen that. Watson's people, according to a person with knowledge of the matter, believe that the suspension they are seeking is significant. Probably a year, they say. Along those lines, the NFLPA has retained outside attorney Jeffrey Kessler to become involved in the case. Person familiar with the NFL view said, the league is wary that Kessler will argue for no disciplinary action. Now, Jeffrey Kessler, G. Bush, is the heaviest of heavy hitters as far as sports law goes. He was involved in arguing the case that the NCAA's treatment of Division I college football and basketball players with no pay was not proper. He won that case. He was involved in arguing the Deflategate case for Tom Brady. He was involved in arguing the Bountygate case. He was involved in arguing Adrian Peterson's case, Ray Rice's case, Adrian Peterson's case, Ezekiel Elliott's case. In short, the NFLPA is getting a real heavy hitter to lawyer up in this situation, who's going to make the argument that he shouldn't be suspended at all.
I just think sometimes when you say it a bunch of times and you start to really think about it, I ask myself this. Everybody has basically stated that the reason they're going to suspend Deshaun Watson is because one segment of the population might be upset, or you didn't go hard enough on him and it looks bad, Well, they got another thing on their hand at this point too. And I said this earlier. I said it in the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. I'm going to tell you, there are individuals who look like me, who come from where I come from, who come from a certain area of this country, and that live by two different standards, as whether you are presumed guilty or you have outcomes that are equal or fair in the judicial system. African-American men do not have the same set of rules or standards when it comes to practicing penalties, when it comes to the courtroom, and when it comes to anything. They're going to have I need them to think very long and hard about this, right? Because I've been always on the side of, hey, why would I suspend him if he still says he's not guilty of anything and he wants to defend himself in not only criminal court, but civil court? He's already won the criminal cases. So now you're going to say, I'm not even going to give this young man an opportunity to have his day in civil court to contest what these women are saying, right? And the women have an opportunity to have that case, as well as Deshaun Watson. They're going to have a very hard time selling that to the black community, saying we are now going to tell you we're going to suspend you for a whole year because we don't like the way it sounds. Well, you got a very hard problem because they're bringing in heavy hitters. They're bringing in other guys, and I'm sure I'm not a lawyer. I don't have nothing. I don't have any picks in this situation. But they're going to bring a lawyer in that's going to say, okay, well, why don't we just bring an injunction? How's about we sue the league, right? And if we want to sue the NFL, that means if we want to bring a lawsuit forward, we get an operation, we get an opportunity to get discovery, right? So I want to get discovery on Daniel Snyder. I want all the discovery emails between the league office and Robert Kraft and exactly what happened in Jupiter or Florida. And I also want to know about the your assault cases and the photographs and all the illicit things going on in Dallas. Now, what happens is that discovery becomes public. Now, league, do you really want them finding out all of that with the discovery? And I always place this on, and I put this on the backdrop. I'm very leery to talk about things of race and blanket stating things. I'm very clear on that. But the problem is this: they have a Colin Kaepernick thing on their hand. The league, you telling me we have to take sexual assault? Yes, we do. But you took kneeling to a whole nother level. Effectively, not only is Ray Rice out of the league, he should have been for what he did. Great. But you also have Colin Kaepernick, who's never gotten a job again, and he didn't do anything about sexual assault. You just didn't like the fact that he kneeled during the national anthem. He has never played a lick, not a down again in the National Football League, and you had to pay him money to do so. So now we're looking at you like this. Okay, you got similar crimes, you got similar burdens of proof. Now all of a sudden you're going to tell me you're going to suspend Deshaun Watson for an entire year when we have television. We understand what Robert Kraft did, right? They're not going to let that slide. And there's a lot of people in the African American community that are going to be upset with that move because it shows blatant bias and disrespect for the two standards of rules that the NFL is trying to operate under. It just doesn't work that way.
G. Bush, well stated. Appreciate it. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we will talk a little bit about some of the things that went on in Minicamp, plus a update on Denzel Ward. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with G. Bush from 92.3 Fan, The Barbershop, as well as one of the co-hosts of the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. Well, a little bit of a concern yesterday as Denzel Ward forced to leave the field from a mandatory minicamp before the rest of the team. But Jake Trotter from ESPN tweets this out. Told by the Browns that cornerback Denzel Ward should be good to go for the start of training camp after leaving that minicamp with a lower foot injury. G. Bush, that's obviously important. Browns want that guy on the field as much as possible. There's no need to get him out there until the games start to count.
Hey, listen, put him in bubble wrap. I don't care. Hey, we don't need to see. That's why you draft all them other corners, the Emersons, and you got AJ Green, and you got, Newsome. He's out there. He's a young guy. Hey, look, we just need to get these dudes to the season. I know how it is. It's the last couple of days of minicamp, and you be tired. You out there moving around. It's hot outside, and at this point, nobody cares if you're All-American or you're All-Pro in the middle of June. That don't get it done. We need you to be ready for the season, and that's one of the things that especially since he's a defensive player. We just talked about year-long suspensions, right? So it's a difference between Deshaun Watson and Jacoby Brissett, right? So this defense is going to have to carry the Browns. We need everybody on deck. We need all hands on deck. We need the pass rush. We need corner. We need lockdown corner play. And plus, he's one of the guys that allows us to do a lot of different things now. Having good corners allows your safeties to move around and do some things that are non-traditional instead of playing in the muni lot like my man Greg Williams used to have Jabril Peppers. I'm like, man, what is this safety doing back in the muni lot?
Punt returner, man.
Punt return. Hey, listen, ain't it a breath of fresh air when we ain't got to talk about nothing like that?
Absolutely.
Good gracious, man.
All right.
It's just awesome, man.
3 takeaways from minicamp, according to Dog Pound Daily. Number 1, wide receiver David Bell, the rookie, looks like a pro. Number 2, Grant Delpit, second-year guy, ready to make a big leap here. It's third-year guy, actually. He was hurt his first year. And then also Demetric Felton, making a case at wide receiver. G. Bush, it was kind of funny. I'm sure you heard it. They asked David Bell if he had dropped a pass. He said, yeah, you guys weren't around when I did. There was one of them.
Yeah. Well, listen, man, this is going to be one of the most interesting camps because even while we watching preseason games and stuff, we're going to get an opportunity to see the wide receiver room. And these dudes are the guys that I'm looking for an opportunity to see what they're going to do. And the great thing about it is, everybody but Amari Cooper, y'all gonna get a lot of reps. I would play them dudes all the way into the third quarter. Anthony Schwartz, you're gonna get ready. You're gonna be working. We need to see what Demetric Felton is talking about. And I'm actually happy that Demetric Felton got the memo. Most of the times, people, when you like a young guy, you be doing stuff and you don't be understanding a little bit. Like when they drafted Ford from Cincinnati, that was the writing on the wall. That meant they didn't sign Dearness Johnson and gave him a bonus. Kareem Hunt is under contract. Nick Chubb, you already know what that is. So you already started off 4 deep. And then they drafted a kid who they got high hopes for from Cincinnati, who's a big, strong kid, can move, catch the football. So Demetric Felton's like, note to self, I might want to get him the jugs machine. I need to be a note to self, work on the toe tap on the sideline because they ain't looking good at running back, son. So he must have got out there, worked on his hands. And the fact that they got Jakeem Grant, he's the returner. So they told Anthony Schwartz and Demetric Felton, you guys just only work on catching the football. We need you to work on that. And then David Bell, I'll tell you what. They act like David Bell gonna start. If I was Donovan Peoples-Jones, I would be like, he a little too close for comfort because they love him. I mean, I see him. You was out there. I saw you out there. Shout out to you too, man. You done moved all the way on the sidelines. I see you in your polo. I said, oh, they got him going. And talking to Jimmy D. I said, oh man, my man, they done moved up over here. But I'll shout out to y'all, man. Hey, they love Bell. I saw him in the first huddle. He getting snaps. He don't drop the ball. It looked like he know all the plays. So he's a guy that they're going to really spot shadow. I'm looking for a big year from the young guy.
Yeah, the other guy that I think is going to have a huge year for the Browns is Amari Cooper. Cooper talked yesterday just about the work that they've got done and how he feels in this offense.
Came in, I have a real good understanding of the playbook and the things we want to do on offense because we've installed pretty much everything to this point. And yeah, I can visualize how the offense will be ran and how we can be explosive and how we can be dominant. So I feel like we got a lot accomplished. Other than the playbook, just the timing with the quarterbacks. Me, Deshaun, we've been able to complete a lot of passes. We've had a lot of success, and then the success that we didn't have, we were immediately able to fix it. And some of the times we ran the very same play the next day, and we were successful at it. So the timing has been great, communication has been great, and I'm just looking forward to actual training camp now.
Can you visualize how good this team can be?
Oh, of course. I mean, listen, this team was good last year. One of the things that was an emphasis in the offseason was improving in the passing game, and most of this camp, this has been a passing camp. Coach emphasized that. And I think we were pretty successful. Obviously, we still have to iron out a lot of details and get better. But I think overall it was a successful passing camp.
G. Bush, how important is Cooper to what they want to do? I mean, this guy, he's really good.
Man, I said it when he got here. He's probably just on being a tactician, as far as his route running, as far as being a professional, as far as putting his head down, going to work, and as far as his production in this league, man, he's probably, one of the best, most consistent receivers we had in a long time. And I think you could take away from what he said right there. I take like 2 or 3 things from that. Like, just the simple fact that Coach Stefanski has said, this is a passing camp. How many coaches would have came in and been like, well, guys, we're not just going to worry about that. How many people say, God, we're kind of really slow and we really haven't got into our playbook yet. We're just repping the basics, the bread and butter stuff. Nah, I was excited when I heard him say, hey, the whole playbook almost in. We done already put everything in. I mean, I'm comfortable with we running, and I think we can be explosive. I think that when you look at what he's going to bring to the table he's a guy that only care about football. Like, you're not going to hear too much from Amari Cooper from nowhere else. It's just like he's just in the football. He just want to get to camp. How many times have you got to a point where there's a lot of people that make a joke in previous Browns teams that they don't want to go to training camp? You see what I'm saying? Look how many times, oh, man, I don't even know if I want to be ready for training camp. It's going to be... Nah, he's excited and that's the way it is when you're around a team who really believes that you have an opportunity to do something special. And trust me, every great player knows in their heart of heart whether or not they on at that point has something to do special. See, everybody ain't going to win. There's 12, 14 teams around the league that understand, this is a stat season, or this is getting rookies ready season, or this is let's try to surprise somebody and win 9 games this year. Every team ain't built for that. In so many years, the Browns haven't had it. But to get a guy like Amari Cooper, like you said, who's looking forward to doing something, and quiet is kept too. He wants to show Dallas a little something. He want to show him a little something like, for real, y'all just gonna get rid of me? Like, okay. Well, like, CeeDee Lamb versus me. I'll take the challenge, right? We'll see who come out on top. I like that. So I think it's going to be a great year. And Amari Cooper, hey, I don't want to see y'all spreading it around either. Spoon feed him. You tell Jacoby Brissett, hey, Amari Cooper need 12 targets a game. Hey, spoon feed him, man. He out there for a reason. Come on now.
All right, G. Bush and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll hear a little bit more from Amari Cooper, how the young guys are responding to him. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just a mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns with G. Bush. He's the host of the Barbershop, 92.3 The Fan, Saturday mornings from 8 until noon. You can hear him as well as co-host of the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. Wide receiver is an area where the Browns need some of the younger guys to step up, though, but plenty of opportunities for them to seize their opportunities. Amari Cooper is viewed as kind of the veteran, the guy that the young guys look to, and Cooper likes that role.
According to my 8th year, these guys look at me like an old guy. Especially, the rookies, not just the second and third year players. But, I've been seeing a lot of explosion. I've been seeing a lot of, they pay attention to detail. They know the importance of them, coming in every day and knowing their stuff and trying to perfect everything they do because they know the position that they're in as far as making a team and stuff like that. But they've been doing a good job, very efficient.
What's your, speaking of the rookies, just David Bell, what do you think of him? What type of impression has he made on you early on?
Yeah, you can see that he's a perfectionist. Like he wants to do everything right, he's a young player, so he's only going to get better. But I've seen some good stuff out of him. I haven't seen him drop many balls, and he takes coaching very well. I was in his ear a couple of times about certain routes, and he immediately went out there and did it. He's going to play a lot this year. Obviously, all of us have to earn our role, but I think he'll do a good job in training camp. And like I said, he takes coaching well, so I think he'll be a tremendous player for us this year.
And G. Bush, young guys, there's a reason he's been in the league 8 years. Figure out what he's doing and do exactly what he does.
Yeah, for me, I take a look at it, and it's so great that you got a guy like Amari Cooper in there that's able to do and actually mentor a little bit. Because a lot of times when you look at Amari Cooper, sometimes you get a number one receiver. And don't get me wrong, Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham Jr., they aren't what we would call an individual that doesn't know the game or isn't willing to give little pointers here or there. But one of the things that I could understand is those dudes is trying to go out there and they trying to get points. They trying to catch the football. They ain't worried about pulling no rookies aside, showing them what to do over here and doing it over here. And hey, come on over here. Let me show you what you need to do coming out of your break. This is what you need to be watching for. So I'm happy at one point for one thing that Amari Cooper is a veteran. He's actually done that in his league before. But I'm actually excited for the younger guys, the David Bells of the world, the Anthony Schwartz of the world, that you just watch, man. And he's not – sometimes when you got really – because a lot of receivers have that personality, that big personality, that really, like, larger-than-life thing. Sometimes you could get caught up in just watching them. And I think that happened a lot with Jarvis in OBJ. The personalities are so – big, and they best friends. They even with the LSU. Sometimes you can feel like as a young dude, like, oh yeah, I'm just watching. I'm just in awe a little bit. You know what I mean? Instead of getting in there, mixing it up, learning as much as you can from them, really asking questions, really taking some of their game and putting it with yours. And there's so much of their game is about flair, one-hand catches, and some of the spectacular things that they ever able to do. With just, moving their body to, get the football. Some of those things aren't even duplicatable. So for me, I like the energy of the room. I love the fact that It's a calming effect. Like I said, I still haven't heard Amari Cooper and Nick Chubb say nothing. It's the first time I heard him talk since he was here, 2 or 3 times, man. And that's one of the great things about this team is you rarely, heck, David and Njoku don't talk that much. I don't ever rarely hear him talk. Denzel Ward is one of the most quiet people I know. Like, you know what I'm saying, just being here. So this energy, and Anthony Walker said something. He said, man, when I was in Indy, we had that energy. We knew guys, we could do something special. And we knew that we had Andrew Luck, and we knew that we had a good defense, and that we had everybody know what they were supposed to do. He's like, man, I'm finally starting to get that here. I'm finally starting to feel that way here with these guys, and that's because the whole defense is back. So I'm excited for it. I'm excited for the season, man. I wish I could fast forward it, but I don't want to fast forward my summer. But I do want to get to some games and see some of these guys in action, because there's a lot of new players we haven't got to see yet either.
Yeah, and there's a lot of talent on this roster without question. G. Bush and I are going to step aside, take one more time out, other side of the break. We'll hear from a former NFL executive about a potential Baker Mayfield trade. We'll also hear from Jadeveon Clowney. Sports4CLE, be right back talking Browns. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with G. Bush from the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, as well as host of the Barbershop, 92.3 The Fan. Catch him tomorrow morning, 8 to noon. This is from the GM Shuffle. Michael Lombardi on a possible trade between the Browns and the Panthers that involves Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold.
The Darnold for Mayfield rumor, to me, is just a bad rumor. This is a 3-part trade, right? So you've got to get Baker, who's due to make $18 million. Mm-hmm. You've got the Browns to agree to what are they going to pay, or how much will they take, or will they not take? And then you've got to agree to compensation. I get the sense that they've been able to work some of those details out. I think they're probably not quite to finish the deal, but I think they're the only team. I think if Baker realizes there's only one place to go, which gives him the opportunity to A, to compete to be a starter, and B, to build a career going forward, that Carolina might be the best place. I mean, Carolina is building this kind of culture that nobody believes us. Nobody thinks we're going to be any good. Mm-hmm. Nobody sees us. And so, they've got some good pieces there. I mean, they've got some good defensive pieces. They've got some good offensive pieces if they can keep McCaffrey healthy. So, that mentality is going to serve them well. But I think Baker's got to understand that. So I think the Browns and the Panthers probably can get a deal worked out. I think it's the other elements that need to get finished before this closes.
And G. Bush, that culture that Mike Lombardi thinks they're building plays right into what Baker Mayfield's strength is. I don't see a lot of the pieces that he's talking about on offense. McCaffrey's good if he can stay healthy, but
I mean, listen, hey, I'd be skinny if I could stop from eating. I mean, it's a little easier said than done, my man. And plus, I don't understand why he doesn't feel like it matches up. I think Sam Darnold's making like $19 million or something. I don't know why that trade don't work. I guess maybe he's saying that they don't want to take the Darnold money and they don't want to get rid of Darnold and still have to take $18 million for Baker. So does that mean they trade? Why would they trade Sam Darnold to us? We take his $19 million, they take his $18 million and call it a wash, or they give us like a 7th round pick or something. I don't understand why he necessarily doesn't believe the money doesn't add up. I think that the individuals they don't get it, the fact that the Browns could technically just eat it. They could just put him there, right? The Browns have enough cap space to just be like, you know what, we're just gonna have you sit, and if something comes along, we'll move you. for a better deal or whatever the case may be. And I think there's a little more pressure on Carolina. Carolina don't got some juggernaut team that they can just continue to float out there. As a matter of fact, Matt Rule has a bunch of pressure on him to win football games, man. I mean, they came there, gave him a lot of money. A lot of people said it was a great hire, but if you look at it, he was at Temple a little while. He got to Baylor and did his thing a little bit. But he kind of shot through the roof, one of those coaches that came up from the bottom to the top extremely fast. But now you're at the top of the stack in the NFL, and you got to get to the playoffs. You got to start showing some of these wins. There's no more such thing as this 5-year plan. And Mike Lombardi's still talking like he's a general manager that would give out 5-year plans. Well, we got to, build it up. They got a couple of pieces. No, they don't. They got Christian McCaffrey, who's a running back who's always hurt. They have no option at quarterback. They drafted a kid in the 3rd round, and now the coach is sitting here and saying, I'm on the hot seat, and I need to win. You need to, if you want to get the best quarterback available, you trade Sam Darnold, you get him out of there, you trade one guy for another guy, you get him in there, and at least you got a better opportunity to win with a dude who kind of knows the playbook. Because I'm going to let you know this right now. If your plan is to suck for like the first 3 games and then throw the rookie in there and he's going to show some flashes, you'll be gone. You'll be gone, Rule. You'll be gone by week 8. They'll already be talking about finding the hottest new coaches that started 6-0. Some coach from Mississippi State or something will be 6-0, and they'll be like, well, I'm hearing his name for the Carolina job.
All right.
Always happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Before I let you go, take a listen. Jadeveon Clowney talked about why he re-signed with the Browns, as well as what he thinks about this year's team.
Yeah, it's pretty laid back, man. I think we get along well. It's a good group, very young team. Hell, I'm one of the oldest ones on here. It's the weirdest thing now, but it's a young team, and we have a lot of fun together. I have a lot of fun out here with these guys, and that was my biggest part of coming back, too. I had a lot of fun with them last year.
Yeah.
And
can you tell if it's a better team yet?
I think so. Of course. Like I said, we was good on defense. Like, we've picked in some new pieces on the offense and defense, and I just feel like we're a better team this year than we was last year.
And Anthony Walker said after you signed, like you texted him, just kind of texted him super.
Yeah, I feel like I told him we was a couple pieces away last year, a couple plays away. If I come back, I'm chasing it. So the same thing I told Miles, man, we got to chase that Super Bowl. I ain't coming here just to win 8-9 games. I want to chase the Super Bowl, and I think we got a shot. Just keep going, put it together this year and see where it goes.
When you're making your decision year by year, does it never matter about the offensive personnel and what that offense looks like before you make that decision?
It did this year. I did this year because I told him I was all about where my boy Deshaun was going. When I talked to him, I said I played with him, and he kept us off the field a lot. And I was like, wherever you go, I know you want to keep us off the field. You put up a lot of points, put us in rushing situations instead of having to stop the run all the time. And I just wanted to go play with him and see what I can do with him again.
G. Bush, like you said before, teams know when they have the opportunity to make a run, and these guys feel like they do.
See, I told y'all, man. I just want to. I ain't gonna make this a G. Bush told you session, but I told you before. I said I had really good sources. Go check my Twitter timeline about October and November. I said, listen, I'm hearing from sources, and these are solidified sources, that Jadeveon Clowney is not coming back if Baker Mayfield's the quarterback. A lot of people said, bro, you crazy. Yeah, you can't say that. I was like, hey, listen, I'm just figuring, this is what they telling me. They're saying, the people saying that they want a upgrade at quarterback and they want an opportunity. They feel they're a quarterback away from having an opportunity. Fast forward, Jadeveon Clowney looks around and then the news breaks that Deshaun Watson, the Browns have traded for him. All of a sudden, I'm hearing the same sources. Yeah, Jadeveon Clowney is back in the mix. That's when I start being like, hey, Jadeveon Clowney, you might want to come on back now. We ready to go. And lo and behold, sources do come up true sometimes, So a blind squirrel finds a net every once in a while. But I tell you what, it matters who's your quarterback. I think he mentioned something, all jokes aside, when you're a defensive end, it's something to be said for the fact that when the games are close, that means You ain't getting no sacks. You ain't getting those cute little pass rush moves. You're going to have to get off blocks because you got to expect run and pass. But if you got a quarterback that can get you up to a quick lead, 14-0, 17-0, now, guess what? Offense has to scrap that whole game plan. They can't come out here and establish the run. Now, guess what? You're predictable. I know I can pin my ears back. Now it's pass rush, and now that's what we can do. Denzel Ward loves it. He can get those interceptions. Myles Garrett, Jadeveon Clowney love it because they can rush the passer. So that's what a good quarterback gives you. It forces the other team to change the way they look at the game depending on what's going on. And every single defensive player always wants to play with a guy who you could always come back with. Hey, just let's get the ball back for old boy. Let's get the ball back for Deshaun Watson. Hey, I think he could do something with it. So I totally understand what he's saying, and I'm like I said, man, if we could just get rid of those suspensions and all, just give me 6 games or something, Goodell. Let me know. Holler at your boy. I'm ready to get to the season, man. Doing all this other stuff.
G. Bush, as always, appreciate the time and the insight. Garrett Bush, make sure you watch him. The Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, Monday through Friday from 11 until 1. Almost gave you an hour extra work, as well as 92.3, The Fan, The Barbershop, 8 until noon tomorrow, Saturday. Have a good one, G. Bush. Appreciate it, man.
You too, man. Happy Father's Day, by the way, too.
You too. We'll see you, G. Bush. Have a good one. All right, G. Bush. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out of the break. Jack Duffin will talk Deshaun Watson contract extension, what it might look like. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a line. A long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
Sports4CLE continues, and we continue talking Browns. Let's take a look at this. This is from Over the Cap, and it's an interesting graph. It shows you the amount of cap space remaining. So you see the Browns with over $42 million of cap space. Now look at the other teams that are around the Browns. Panthers, the Bears, the Steelers, the Cowboys, the Commanders, the Seahawks. You get down to the Packers, that's a pretty good roster. But the Browns have arguably one of the better rosters in the NFL and the most cap space, $42.16 million left. That is tops in the NFL. With that, let's welcome in Jack Duffin from the Orange and Brown Report. We always refer to his stuff when we refer to the salary cap. 88 of 90 players signed, Jack. When you look at the Browns and the amount of cap space and the way the roster is constructed, how impressive is that? And you see the other teams that are by them as far as cap space remaining, those rosters aren't nearly as good. Is that fair to say, do you think?
Yeah, they've done such a phenomenal job, this front office, of bringing in talent and looking for cheap deals as well, because they haven't been rash and gone out there. And you see some teams, perfect example, the Jacksonville Jaguars this year, start of free agency, they were just throwing money around, just signing anyone. And they were spending money, but not getting that quality of player you want if you're going to invest the money. So they've been really smart with what they're doing. They've borrowed some from the future, and hey, there'll be cap consequences down the line. But as it stands, I'd say it's pretty clear. It's the most talented roster in the entire NFL. Can they bring it all together? That's a whole other equation we'll find out when week 1 commences.
So 88 of 90 roster spots available signed after they signed Cade York, the kicker. There's money in there, but you mentioned there's the cap. Do you expect any big signings or any name signings potentially?
Yeah, I think it's more a waiting game of seeing if they really need that guy. So I'd say that the 3 spots that make the most sense is wide receiver. So let's have a few more weeks and see, can these young guys really step up and perform? If not, there's the likes of Will Fuller is the most obvious name to go out there and make a move. Tight end, there's 2 obvious locks, and then who knows what the other guys produce there. And the other one is defensive tackle. do these guys step up? Jordan Elliott might have a great third year. You could have Perion Winfrey as a rookie. You can have Tommy Togiai. If these guys step up, then suddenly you don't need that veteran. So I think it's more of a case of waiting. And if we get that reward of these young guys performing well, then don't step into free agency. But if we don't, or someone gets injured, you can go and make that move. I think it's more assessing the value and really getting a sense for how good these players have stepped forward, because no one knows going into that second year, a player can really change their body in that off season and come back as a better player. And fingers crossed, we'll see that in many places.
When you look at the salary cap, it's going to continue to go up because it's based on the revenues that are generated. The NFL is always finding more revenue streams to tap into. Sports wagering is going to be one of them. Do you expect the salary cap, and you keep your eye on this, do you expect it to just keep going up and up and up? And how high does it eventually go?
Oh, there's no ceiling to the number. It's going to continue to rise. So off the top of my head, we're expecting about 225 million next year. The year after, over the cap's predicting about 256 million. And then I think that's where we sort of get over the COVID, because there's still some of the paying back COVID money at the moment the league's doing. But I would say after that 256 million in 2024, I then expected to go back to about a 6% increase each year, because that new massive TV deal they signed almost a year ago, the NFL, none of that's actually kicked in yet. So they signed those deals well in advance, because you don't want to get to 6 weeks before the season and you're rushing around trying to force a deal through. You sign that in advance, and then the benefit comes down the line. But it will continue to rise, and so do player salaries, because, hey, Myles Garrett was a highly paid edge rusher at 25 million. And now Aaron Donald's on 31 point something. So the salaries continue to grow. It's not you suddenly get more money. The money is going straight through to the players.
All right. Now, Deshaun Watson earlier this week said he wants to stay in Cleveland. Cleveland is his home. He wants to be here for the rest of his career. With that in mind, I know you've done this exercise, but take us through the last part of what a restructured deal for Deshaun Watson would look like. And I know you've already done it, and we'll throw that up. So this is kind of the back end of it, and take us through how you figure that out and how that looks in terms of the cap hit.
Yeah, so this is if they decide to restructure every single year of the deal and kick the can right into the future, and then, hey, in 10 years' time when he retires, they can deal with the consequences then. And that is just a route they could go. I certainly expect next year he's not going to play on the 46 million base salary and then some signing bonus. That is going to get restructured again. And all the restructure means is paying the player. He's still going to get 46 million, but what they do is pay a large chunk of that, as much as possible, in a signing bonus, and then spread the salary cap over the next 5 years. So the player still gets the same money. It makes no difference to them. It's just like buying on a credit card, and they're just going to load up that credit card with Deshaun Watson and continue to push that money out into the long term. But I think what you're going to see is after he's completed 3 years of his deal, before we get into year 4 of the deal, is they'll sit down and go, right, 2 years left. We want to keep you here long term. What's that going to take numbers wise? And I'm predicting, who knows where the quarterback market moves over the next 3 years, but I'm predicting that will be about 54 million a year. So if we're looking at that, another 5-year deal, 270 million, probably fully guaranteed. I reckon that's the sort of deal it's going to take to keep Deshaun Watson here on the next contract, because, hey, he's come here, and I'm 100% sure the front office has had this sort of exercise. Kwesi spoke about, after he moved to the Vikings, they were talking about comp picks in 2027 and all sorts of things they could do. So everything is game planned with this front office. And I think that's a realistic number. Who knows? It might go up slightly, it might go down slightly. But I think you're talking around 54 million a year. Within 3 years' time, the quarterback market's already going to be there.
When you look at a quarterback, and we saw in the one column that you did the percentage of salary cap that a quarterback took up, and none of Deshaun's were over 16%. When you look at the percentage of cap that a franchise quarterback should take up, what's that supposed to look like if you're maintaining the ability to build around him?
So it doesn't matter too much what the number is. It's more, are they good enough? And that's sort of the discussion that came around Baker Mayfield, etc. Baker's top half of the league quarterback, But if you actually really want to compete on a veteran deal, they have to be at least in the top 8, ideally in the top 5, for how good that quarterback needs to be to really make the difference. And the worst thing you can do is Andy Dalton, perfect example with the Bengals. He's a good quarterback when he was there, but the issue was they just won 8 or 9 games every single season. So they were never good enough to really compete for a Super Bowl until they bottomed out, everything went wrong, and then they jumped up with Joe Burrow. So I think it's all down to how Deshaun Watson plays. If Deshaun Watson plays the same way he was playing sort of sitting out, looking back to sort of 2020, 2019, anything is possible. And it doesn't really matter how much you pay him. So yeah, if he's on this $46 million a year deal, fine. If we're talking in 5 years' time, he's on $54 million a year, that's easily doable. It's going to come down to can the rest of the players assist him and really drive him forward.
We've seen kind of teams, the Saints come to mind, and I'm sure there's a couple others, that have run up against the cap. Does that eventually happen to every team that's really good? Does it come to a point where you can't push it any further, or are there ways to work around that?
So there always becomes a limit. If we saw what happened to the Saints last offseason, they gutted the entire middle of their roster, and then what happened was they had one wide receiver, Michael Thomas got injured, and then they had no wide receivers. And losing the likes of Emmanuel Sanders really hurt that franchise. So you don't want to quite go to the extreme that the Saints went until you get, if we're talking about the last 2 years of Deshaun Watson's career before he retires, go crazy. Try win a Super Bowl there, because you can deal with the consequences after he retires, bring in a rookie contract quarterback and sort of work it. You don't want to be doing that sort of stuff now where you're talking about 10 years of Deshaun Watson, because if the Browns push themselves right up against the cap and suddenly they're getting rid of the middle of their roster, Deshaun Watson's not going to want to re-sign on a bad team. This is about having a team that's going to compete for 10 years worth of Super Bowls, because suddenly, hey, you might get to 2 Super Bowls, win one of them in that time. You're maximizing the opportunity. The last thing you want is, hey, we're going to go for it for 1 or 2 years, and if we don't win a Super Bowl, we're going to have to rebuild. That's really risky when you've got a loaded AFC, which has got Mahomes, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow. You've got so many good quarterbacks that it's never going to be a case where this is definitely our year. It's about getting to the playoffs and then that bit of luck on the end. So maximize your opportunity across as many years as possible. And there'll be tough decisions coming down the line. They're not going to be able to afford to keep everyone. That's perfectly fine. We saw it with Sheldon Richardson last year. If you're not performing above the value of your contract, you've got to move on. Find other players, and as long as the quarterback's doing well and a few key pieces in sort of the DBs, pass rush, tackles, wide receivers, as long as those guys are performing and getting good value, everything else you can work around the other positions.
Jack Duffin and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we will take a look at cumulative rushing over expected yards. An interesting graph with the Browns backfield. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a line. A long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just a mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns with Jack Duffin from the Orange and Brown Report. Take a look at this chart. It's really interesting. This is showing the Browns backfield, the three main guys, Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, and Dearness Johnson. Cumulative yards rushing over expected. And two of them, Chubb and Dearness Johnson, significantly almost a half yard each over what is expected per carry. Kareem Hunt is below, but when you look at that, Dearness Johnson is the purple, so he has the highest, and then you see Chubb kind of goes up and really took off later in the year. Jack, when you look at that, take us through, and you tweeted that out, so that's why you mentioned, follow Jack on Twitter. You'll find some interesting stuff as well, Jack Duffin on Twitter. Take us through what that tells you, and how impressive it is that you have two of the highest guys.
Yeah, so it tells us that in terms of for every rushing attempt that a player's had, how much more than what you would expect. Because, hey, if it's a really badly blocked play, you can't sort of fault a running back for getting caught in the backfield, because that's probably not their fault. If someone's missed their block or something like that, then it's harsh to mark them down and use that pure like, oh, he got 7 yards per carry, he's doing great, or he's got this, he's doing badly. And as well, if you're going for a goal line run where there's only 1 yard to go, you don't want to credit a player down because, well, he only rushed 1 yard, well, he got a touchdown. So it's looking at this core data and going, hey, did he achieve more than what you'd expect? And we see two running backs that were phenomenal, and that is Chubb and Dearness Johnson. And then looking at the last 2 years, we see one that's actually underperforming, and that's Kareem Hunt. And I was surprised looking at these numbers. I expected it to almost be all three up there. So it's a really important thing to look when you're thinking about the future. And we need to remember with Kareem Hunt, he's coming off missing 9 games last year. 26 is start of the age curve where we tend to see a decline in several running backs. Very different from other positions on the roster. It happens a lot earlier, just because of the physical pounding you take at the position. So it's certainly one to keep an eye on moving forward. Will he probably play 17 games this season? Unlikely. And that's purely because just looking at a player that's out for 9 games 1 year is very unlikely to play all season the next. So these things factor into, there's going to be an interesting discussion, and everything's pointing to Kareem Hunt making the roster, but it's not a zero chance. And Browns fans need to be aware of that. We're talking about $6.25 million for Kareem Hunt. And based on those numbers that we've just seen, Dearness Johnson is comfortably outperforming him and going to cost $1.265 million. And that's a decision that might well be faced by this front office, because both are free agents in a year's time.
Yeah, and the other thing to keep in mind is they drafted Jerome Ford, a guy by all accounts that is talented and has some of the same skill sets as Kareem Hunt. So the next question becomes, is it likely, I'll take it down either road that you want, that the Browns trade one of those running backs because they do have Jerome Ford, you do have Dearness Johnson, you do have Kareem Hunt, you do have, and if so, who do you think would be the most likely to be traded?
Yeah, so it's very much likely to be one of the two guys that are on expiring deals. So that is Dearness Johnson or Kareem Hunt. I would say I still think it's more likely Dearness Johnson is the one moved on. And that's because in a year's time, both those players are free agents. There's very little chance of Kareem Hunt re-signing in Cleveland, purely because it's going to be an expensive deal, and the Browns just don't have the money. They're putting it into Deshaun Watson, into other parts of the roster. You can't pay $6 million a year, and it'll probably be more on the next deal, to your running back too, when we can't afford money for our starting defensive tackles. We can't afford money in other parts of the roster. You need all of that money in your starters. And then Dearness Johnson is also on an expiring deal. So what you wouldn't want to do is have all three of those running backs back, and then in a year's time, you sat there with 2 hitting free agency, and you've got Nick Chubb and Oni Ford. So I think there's actually a better chance that Felton makes the roster than Dearness Johnson. And it's not because Felton's suddenly 10 times a better player of Johnson. It's just looking at career projections and the fact that Felton's under contract for 3 years. These other guys are under contract for 1 year. And all of those numbers do come into play. And if we remember a year ago, everyone was telling me there's no way Sheldon Richardson's going to get cut. Something that I was keenly saying, this looks like it should happen. And he was the best defensive tackle on the roster. clearly the best defensive tackle last year, and they still cut him because it's just about the cost of the deal versus the other opportunities it opens up. So I think we're probably talking about 20% Hunt, 80% chance that Jonas Johnson's moved. But I think it might end up much closer than that. So certainly one to keep an eye on. And don't look at it as just a one-year window. Look at that bigger picture. Health is going to be a big factor because it's okay having what you think Kareem Hunt's going to be valued, but if he's only playing half the season or 2/3 of the season, well, what are you doing for the rest of the season when he's out? So, hey, if it was me making the decision, I'm keeping Jonas Johnson, move Kareem Hunt on, get a pick in a trade, and you move forward because we have a historically good O-line and the best O-line coach in the NFL. They are going to open the holes up for any running back to run through them, and that's where the value of this team is and why we're seeing historically good rushing numbers comes from that talent there.
Yeah, that's fair. That's a very, very fair assessment. All right, before I let you go, 3 Browns that could cash in next season. You mentioned Jordan Elliott, Harrison Bryant, and Donovan Peoples-Jones. Tell me your thoughts of that and who you think really could cash in next year of those 3.
Yeah, so there's a mechanism in the NFL called the Proven Performance Escalator, and it means any player drafted between rounds 3 to 7, if they play the average of 35% of snaps across their first 3 seasons, or play 35% or more in 2 of the 3 seasons, then in their 4th year they get a bump. It's only up to $2.6 million in base salary. But so far, those 3 guys are all on course to earn it. So Elliott needs to play 35% this year. Harrison Bryant needs to play 15.9, and DPJ needs to play 16.6. And I think all of those 3 players should easily achieve that number, and then we'll get a bump in salary next year. So this isn't a contract extension. They will just see their salaries next year rise. But that's 3 players just to keep an eye on where they're going to be looking each week and thinking, have I got enough snaps? Jordan Elliott's going to be interested to see which side of the 35% threshold he's on, and he obviously wants to be a little bit higher than that because the last thing you want is you get injured the final 2 weeks of the season and you just drop below. So no, them guys are going to want to be out there and then get an extra. We're talking about $1.5 million, but hey, I wouldn't mind an extra $1.5 million.
I'm with you. Jack Duffin, as always. Great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Again, make sure you follow him on Twitter. Really good stuff. We always use your stuff. We'll always credit you. But, Jack, thanks so much for the time. Appreciate it.
Thanks very much.
All right. Jack Duffin, make sure you read him on the Orange and Brown Report as well. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. See you back here Monday at 4 o'clock on Sports for CLE. Have a great weekend, everybody. See you Monday.